Joining us on the program right now is Seton O'Connor, longtime follower of Hartford Athletic, also part of the Dan Patrick Show. So very grateful to be joined by him today on the show. Seton, welcome to Providence. How are you?
What's up, fellas? How we doing?
Doing
good, man.
Can't complain. So here's my dilemma going into this weekend. We don't have a name for this rivalry yet, which maybe it's good. Maybe you want things to happen organically. One of the supporters groups wants it to be El Clamico, which in my opinion doesn't make sense because the real war right now is oysters. Connecticut thinks they have better oysters than Rhode Island does. So I kind of disagree with that one. Name? El Clamico. El Clamico. That's
that is, regardless of what we're calling it, that's the show title this week.
El Clamico?
Yeah.
All right.
I think that's the name of like an establishment somewhere in Providence, but we won't go there.
Oh, actually, okay, maybe not then. Let's fact check that.
Clamico, it's good.
No, let's fact check that.
Roots, no, it's not. I know the area.
Yeah.
Route 6 Darby. I don't know. What is it a rivalry yet, or is this just, hey, welcome to town, kid?
Okay, first of all, El Clamico is hilarious. I hadn't heard that one yet. That is fantastic. So I'm a big fan of that one. However, I'm going to stick with your original point. I like these things to play out naturally. And the name will eventually develop rather than something forced, right? Like I see chowder getting thrown around a lot. I'm like, I don't want any of that stuff, right?
I don't think chowder when I see Hartford.
No one does. Literally no one does. Absolutely. I think in terms of, is this a rivalry? The only thing I could say is that I had two reactions to finding out Rhode Island was getting a team. One, I was absolutely thrilled because I love USL Championship. I'm a huge supporter of that league, and I love seeing that league grow. I love seeing the game grow in this country. I love everything about a new team in a great place like Providence. Fantastic. Let's go, right? I'm all for it. My second reaction was, we absolutely need to destroy you guys every single time we meet. It was immediately my least favorite team, my most hated team. I don't care what we do this season. We need to beat Rhode Island twice, and we need to finish ahead of you guys in the standings, and everything else after that comes second and third. So that for me, it was immediately Ohio State, Michigan, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's the New England rivalry, right? Where around here, it's mostly Boston, New York, but we finally, us, Rhode Island and Connecticut, we finally have our own rivalry that we can kind of embrace. You know what I mean? Which feels good.
That's one of the things to jump in on that point. Okay. So I've lived in Hartford for 25 years now. Right. And when I first moved to Hartford, it was when like the New York sports clubs were, like expanding all over the place, right? And my neighborhood, or in my little area, they had a big argument about why it was called New York Sports Club and not Boston Sports Club. And like it drove me crazy because I was like, why the hell isn't anybody upset that it's not the Hartford Sports Club? Like, we live in a city, this is our home. Why don't you name it after where we live instead of arguing about being stuck between Boston and New York? It's like places like Hartford and Providence they're not massive cities, but they're great cities. And they're places that should have their own identity, and things like sports teams like this help give us more of our own identity and strengthen that a lot.
And so people that are new to the USL Championship and the league now that they're following Rhode Island FC here, tell us about Hartford Athletic and the culture there. I know I've been following you for a very long time and have seen you, be a big part of the culture there with that club. You had a podcast and everything. So what is the culture like at the games, at the matches, and what can people expect going down there this weekend?
It's great. It's a good bunch. I love this team, especially this year, because they have a lot of West Indian representation, which the Hartford, Springfield area, we got a lot of Jamaican culture, a lot of great food, a lot of great, and this year's team leans into that really heavily, which I just think is a lot of fun. The atmosphere is awesome. It's phenomenal. Once the games originally started at Rentschler Field years ago before Dillon opened up, not Trinity Health Stadium. But Trinity Health is a place where like it's a newer version of it. But I mean, Pele played there, so there's history that goes back a long, long time that we can reach back into and pull forward when we need to. It's not exactly, Fenway and Babe Ruth, but it's what we've got and we love it, So been a lot of turnover in this team. We've had some last year was an epically bad year, which was very difficult. We had Tab Ramos, who everybody was very excited about with that hire. That didn't work out. We brought in a lot of players. A lot of them didn't work out either. So last year was real tough. Then we lost a few of our favorites too, who are now our most hated rivals in Connor McGlynn, Prince Sadie. Those are tough losses too. But there's one thing about the Hartford Athletic fan base is that over the last few years, we've built a tremendous amount of resiliency, just being forced to do so. So it's awesome, man. Having this team has just been one of the best things for the city. Absolutely love it.
We talked to start the show about the inability of the Revolution to score, and then we've talked about the inability of Rhode Island FC to score. It seems to me that looking at Hartford Athletic with 10 goals in 10 games, you're kind of in the same boat. So why do you think so far they haven't been able to score? Is it more on them, or is it on the opposition so far?
It's a tremendous amount of terrible luck. You know, I mean, you hear a lot in the game of just like, hey, unlucky. The amount of times that they have the ball and they get 3, 4, 5 shots in like rapid succession in on a keeper, and it's either off the post, hits a defender, hits a whatever. It's a tremendous amount of bad luck. Hartford is a speedy team, and they can attack, but they just keep getting unlucky. Really, that's all it boils down to for me.
Yeah, that's kind of what's happened with Rhode Island FC too. I mean, even this past week, Noah Fuson hit the post again. And I know you saw the video I posted of Prince Sadie sending one up into like the 12th row from basically inside the 6.
I've
seen that many times, by the way, many times.
So I was gonna say, you replied on Twitter, you know, basically saying like, "Hey, get used to that." I'm like, is this why you guys sent us him or something? But no shot at Prince. We love him. He's electric when he's out there, but got to finish that. But yeah, the goal differential too. I mean, outside of the Louisville game, the goal differential would look a lot different, would actually be better than Rhode Island FC's, because currently Hartford's goal differential is -11, but losing to Louisville, was it 6-0? That obviously puts a big dent in it. So defensively, how have they been? Because even if they're not giving up, you take out that one outlier, it seems like the goal differential actually isn't that terrible.
Yeah, there's been a couple of outliers. There's a little bit of with this team, when it rains, it pours kind of thing. And so defense has always been an issue here. It really needs to tighten up. Tristan Hodge has been a good player for us, and he seems to be the backbone this year a little bit. But there's just, I think it happens with, I don't know if it's league specific, but certainly Hartford Athletic specific. I mentioned the turnover before. There's a lot of new players every single year, and I think that you see that a lot. Defensive mistakes seem to stand out a lot more than offensive ones, and so you could just point your finger to specific moments of like, this was the breakdown here, that was the breakdown there. I think a lot of it has to do with new personnel, and just that turnover and chemistry ultimately,
As somebody that's been a longtime follower of USL Championship, and putting on your unbiased hat for a second, has Rhode Island FC exceeded expectations for what a USL Championship team should be in year one? We're looking at the near completion of the soccer-specific stadium, the first real soccer-specific stadium, I would argue, in the New England area. They've brought in a bunch of USL Championship guys that have familiarity with the league, that is keeping this team relevant, and has now just announced yesterday a team that's going to be on national television in August when they go out to Detroit to play Detroit City, in one of the more chaotic atmospheres in all of USL Championship. So exposure, ownership, stadium,
a lot of ties,
ties. Has this experiment exceeded your expectations so far?
I think right out of the gate, I think Rhode Island was phenomenal. A few big signings. Bringing in Dequa was just like, that was a moment for me that I was like, oh crap, like these dudes are serious. This isn't going to be, well, let's just sort of dip our toes into this or whatever. It seemed very clear that management and ownership wanted to be competitive right out of the gate. I know a lot of draws, like you were saying, which is very frustrating because you feel like a lot of those are wins. Sometimes
Sacramento, Louisville, if Fuson finishes his shot.
Exactly. So no, I feel like looking at it, Rhode Island has overperformed for sure. It hopefully gets better from here and some of those draws turn into wins. But this is all part of being a new club. You know, having your own home is going to be phenomenal. That's going to be just a massive boost. I'm very much looking forward to once that stadium is finished and built and you guys are having games there, getting out there, because once you can call it your own home, it just feels better and it feels more special. And the atmosphere there, the fandom, everything is just gonna, multiply.
And you
And
mentioned
Brett Johnson has to be the perfect owner for this. Sorry, Mike, but
No,
Brett Johnson has to be the perfect owner for this too, considering his experience within the league. He loves soccer. I mean, you're not bringing in a Kurt Schilling and having another 38 studios here. You're bringing in somebody that's got serious, focus and drive when it comes to the game and growing the game in new areas.
And that's what you need to love the game, right? I mean, these things, it seems like owning a soccer team is always a passion project, right? I mean, if you watch any soccer documentary, whether it's about Leeds or Crystal Palace or whatever, right? And every owner that gets into those situations is, I think it was Crystal Palace who said, it's not a matter of if you're going to lose money, it's how much money you're willing to lose, and you're in this too because of your love of the game and civic pride. Ultimately, I think that's a massive part of this for me. So yeah, when you have ownership that is sort of living and dying with your team too, just the way you are, just the way the players are out on the field, that's really the best combination.
Yeah, and Tommy and I, about a year ago now, right around this time last year, when they were getting ready to announce some signings and stuff for the club, Tommy and I were having a conversation with Brett Johnson, and it was right around the time Ipswich had been promoted to the championship, which we now know they're going to the Premier League. He's part ownership there as well, and he said this promotion was one of the top 3 days of my life, right up there with my marriage and the birth of my children. And he said, and I won't tell you which order they're in. And
yeah, right.
To me, that said passion. That's like, all right, so this guy is talking about being promoted to second division in England, which obviously is massive, and now to the Premier League as one of the best days of his life. So I guess I could trust this guy running a football club here in Rhode Island as well. But with that being said, you're a big promotion relegation guy for USA. You're very passionate about it. You're very into the Open Cup in a lot of the lower division leagues. I just wanted to give you a minute to kind of talk about that, because that's obviously something who we've all been a part of the game in some way for so many years, and see how much it's grown. And now being able to see the USL on a day-to-day like we have been, seeing the potential there. Is it ever going to get there? What will it take to kind of push it or to make this a serious thing?
Well, I think when you look at, I know for the American sports fan, it doesn't make a lot of sense, promotion and relegation, because we tend to side with, well, why would our owners take that risk of being relegated? But when you look at, any country that has a pro rel system in place, soccer is by far the #1 sport in the country. It happens worldwide. Right. So the track record is already there that this system works. And for me, where it comes down to is, again, that civic pride part. I love, my wife liked the game, but she didn't love it. And it wasn't, my son and I were really into it. He was young and getting really into the game and falling in love with it. And that was awesome. And I was just like encouraging that. But it wasn't really until the Hartford Athletic showed up in our town that it wasn't even a light bulb that went off over her head. It was like an atomic bomb, where she was like, wait a minute, this team is so important because those are our boys, right? And they're representing our home, and they're going out and they're playing all of these other cities, because this is about Hartford. This is about our city. This is about our home. And that's why this game is so important, because it represents where you live and who you are and where you're from. And the game should be accessible to more people. That too many kids are priced out of the game. It's way too hard to get from, for me anyway, Hartford up to a Revs game or down to NYCFC. It's like it takes all day. You should be able to hop on the train, hop on the bus, and go see your team, and then get back and have dinner. So I think Pro Rel would enable, and this is part of the reason why I love the US Open Cup so much, is because it gives smaller places like Springfield, Massachusetts, or even the next step of the Hartfords and the getting a little larger, Vermont FC had a great run in the Open Cup this year. It's teams that would never get the attention, they would never get the exposure, and they would never get the chance to play bigger clubs. Like so far, Hartford, last year they played Revs, year before that played Red Bull. We never get to do that, but you get to put out your guys and they get to go represent where you live and they get to play against some of the best in the country. Ultimately, that's the competition that you want. That's the competition that we as sports fans live for. Just give us a chance to see what we can do against the best. It's like the very basis,
Let me ask you this. How do you convince your boss, or I guess the guy that you produce for, one of the longest tenured sports personalities in the country in general,
Mount Rushmore,
grew up in a system that was always just playoffs. You're the worst team in the league. Well, you know what? The benefit of that is that you get the first pick in the next draft. How do you convince that guy and people like him that pro rel is something that they should invest into? Because it's going to be hard, because it's not, the people will follow. You feed them whatever they need to be fed.
Or to even talk soccer in general.
Exactly. You feed people what they need to be fed and they'll follow what the media tells them to. It's just, a lot of people are sheep. But when the media responsible for reporting on this stuff and the owners aren't bought into it, how do you convince those people? How do you convince the Dan Patrick, a face of sports media in this country, that you should buy into a pro rel system and forget about playoffs?
He, as much as Dan is a sports fan and someone who covers the game, he is probably more of a storyteller than anything, and he buys into stories. So it's very difficult to get him to watch, I don't know, Manchester City, any real soccer match, Juventus, whoever it is, right? I can't get him to do it. Could be whatever derby is happening, Champions League final, or, Real Madrid, he doesn't really care. But if there's a good story attached to it, then he's in. Mm-hmm. And so he is more in on watching any pro rel battles, or like, hey, did Leeds make it, or did, Ipswich Town, whoever it is, Luton Town's going back down, that's too bad. He loves the story. And I think that one of the things that, say, the NFL does, or even the Premier League, they tell the story the best. The NFL tells stories. That's why we talk about it 12 months out of the year. That's why we spent today, we're, almost a little less than 100 days out, breaking down what wide receivers are, most valuable right now. And do you get CeeDee Lamb or Justin Jefferson? Because the NFL just gives you storyline after storyline, and they tell the story the best. So I think with people like Dan and old school guys who, like, Dan hates soccer. He really does. He hates it. He has no interest, hates the game, thinks it's boring, but he loves a good story. That's where you bring in the audience. That's where you start turning the tide.
Yeah. I mean, you've seen how much something, even like with the F1, with the drive to, what's it called? Drive for Success or something like that. What is it called? It's the Netflix.
The Netflix show. Yeah. It's really good though.
Yeah, no, it is. It's very good. Yeah. And I mean, personally, I've car racing, drag race, all that stuff I haven't had even a part of me been interested in ever in my life. And I found myself wanting to watch some F1 on the weekends. It's like, all of a sudden, because of the story, like you said, being told. So who knows? Maybe you might not get a full on pro rel here, but maybe you get something of something similar to the US Open Cup, where you are getting some of the little guys playing the dudes, but technically they're only bigger because they have the investments in it. But yeah, maybe the storytelling is what we need more of here.
And F1 is so interesting too, because it's got all of like the sizzle, right? That you love to be a fly on the wall. It's got money, it's got fights, cars and glitz and glamour and fights and backstabbing and pettiness. And, it really is like an episode of like Real Housewives with cars. You know what I mean? And like, it is fun to watch that stuff. It scratches that itch of like, yeah, it's kind of negative, but I'll watch that crap too. You know what I mean? But yeah, like one of the great storylines from the US Open Cup this year was El Farolito
that was cool.
In California. Dude, I mean, those are amateurs. Those guys might get, if they get any money, it's $50 for a game. It's $100 maybe. Like, I mean, they're not getting anything.
And a meal after the game too.
Exactly. They might, man, if you could get some food, that's amazing. And these dudes are making a run through the cup. They're beating established teams. And they're named after, like a place to go get burritos. It was like, this is awesome. This is so great. There's all of those little storylines in there that they just need more exposure. And I think it'll have to start more grassroots and local, but people will buy into that stuff.
Well, and maybe to your point too, as we trend to 2026 with the World Cup, they're going to need storylines just like that with the world watching us now.
Yeah. Copa America being here. This is arguably this last, we're in the middle of it now, but this stretch of about 4 years is arguably the most important 4 years in US soccer history, just based on all eyes here. Would it be great if we could get MLS, USL Championship, and all of the leagues a little more on the same page?
Don Garber wants nothing more than to destroy USL Championship. You know it, and I know it. Just say it. Don Garber wants to see every market in America, which brings me to my final question, at least for today. Do you think that Bridgeport is actually a possibility? You have this billionaire investor who wants public money out of the state of Connecticut to bring a soccer-specific stadium, which, presumably, if he's going to be this type of investor, if he's got this type of money, he kind of maybe wants to inch his way into Major League Soccer. Connecticut needs a professional team. I mean, is Connecticut a market are you worried as a Hartford Athletic fan that you might be overshadowed in a couple of years?
I'm not. Am I worried that in a few years, some of these teams go out of business? Yeah, absolutely. It does feel like a lot are like hanging on by a thread, especially some of the lower leagues. The competition between MLS and USL Championship is very real, and just as much as MLS wants USL Championship out of business, if given the chance, USL would do the same thing to MLS. I got no problems with that kind of thing. I'm very much a more teams the merrier. I want more teams. I want every city. I want New Britain, Connecticut, Waterbury, you name it. I want everybody to have their own team. So I think that growth should only help. I think that eventually, in terms of Bridgeport, what you're going to see is I think MLS is trying to expand and do their own closed pro rel, where they have 3 divisions and they basically operate within just their own MLS 3 divisions.
Sure.
So you would get, I think what they're trying to do is go into markets that don't have existing teams. And then I think as they continue to squeeze USL Championship, they're going to try to pick off the bigger USL Championship teams, and they're going to do like a 3 division MLS only closed system. Yeah, exactly. When the loyal, see, I don't understand the business part of that, where the loyal, I don't know why they couldn't compete in that market. I don't know why it had to be one or the other. I don't know all of the specifics of that, but it does seem pretty clear that if MLS can pick off some of these bigger cities, and even just a lot of like the medium markets too, that's obviously what the business model is, and then go to some kind of like 3 or 4 tier pro rel system that's still closed. It's still only their model. You still have to buy your way into it. But
Right.
They would control that, the up and down there.
That's
if
what
you're talking about
like.
media markets too, you got Tampa in there that's up for grabs.
Well, Detroit City too. I mean, that's another one that's, a lot of there's been plenty of clubs, and as the league continues to grow and they want to grow, eventually you can't have, 45 teams in one league with
Wasn't
the playoffs.
St. Louis one of them too?
St. Louis and Portland.
Well, I thought St. Louis had a USL Championship team or a USL Championship 1 team before St. Louis SC came in there. It was like St. Louis FC.
Yeah, Charlotte too.
I think Cincinnati was in that same boat.
Cincinnati.
I think that
Orlando.
they had, or maybe Columbus maybe. There have been a few that jumped from one to the other,
Yeah.
And
Orlando,
I'm a real,
yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm a real sucker for like the underdog thing, so the USL Championship really appeals to my nature, where I like punching up.
Yeah.
Ultimately I want the game to grow. I want everybody to have a team. Every city should. It's the best game, and it fits just especially our smaller cities just so well, to give an identity, and you don't have to be sandwiched between major cities. You can to thrive,
Yeah, I'm having me and my wife are having our first child in a couple months. 2 months from tomorrow actually is the due date. So she decided to plan this weekend to be our quote unquote baby moon. So of course I'm going to be up north in New Hampshire, and I'm going to have to. I was so looking forward to going down to Hartford for this first derby between Rhode Island FC and Hartford Athletic. There is definitely going to be a strong following from Rhode Island going down there to Hartford. And I saw already some tweets out there, you know, to avoid wearing the quote unquote piss yellow. Okay. And to wear green to the dill. So what's going to happen when a bunch of the yellow and the blue
200 yellow showing up, by the way. 200
Yeah,
supporters are supposed to show up this
good amount of
weekend.
supporters going on there. So what can we
That's good.
expect the banter to be like once they make their way to Hartford?
It can be ugly. It can. I think piss yellow might be the start of it, to be honest with you.
Listen, we're about to fight here. We're all good with it. Please,
Yeah.
more flames, more kerosene.
That's what I'm saying, though. That's what we need. I love the fact that that Rhode Island is coming to our home first, and sort of you guys are setting the bar for what this is going to be, right? Because the road team traveling is what's going to be the show, right? So I'm here. I'm all for it. I absolutely love it. I really do.
Well, the stakes have been set really high because the Defiants have said that if Rhode Island FC walks out of there with a loss on Saturday, they're not cheering during the Detroit City game the following week. So first off, they hedge. They said if they don't win, and then somebody goes, well, what if it's a tie?
Well, how does that show support to your club?
Well, because I think people are fed up.
That seems
the Rhode Island
backwards.
FC fans are, for some reason. This isn't me speaking. This is La Banda speaking. I was on with La Banda and Fluffy Cohog.
You can't just not cheer for you. Go stare to these clubs in England that are battling to not be relegated. You think they're not going to go singing at their neck?
But I don't hate it because you have the casuals up the road there in Foxborough that I think have let complacency and, just whatever go on for the last 25 years because it's really, hey, we're friends with the front office. So us as a supporters group, we're not really going to shake the cages. It's refreshing to hear a supporters group. Why I kind of don't agree with it because I think you want to show this state that you have as much support behind it as possible. They want to put pressure on this team to win and perform. And I think that's great. But guess what? And I said this the other night, to them, you're in year one of this experiment. You're relevant going into the month of June in this league. Be happy for that. Yeah. Don't look at this first game as, if we don't win, we're going to be pissed off and we're going to, not cheer the next game against Detroit, which is really dumb because Detroit's one of the better teams in the East and you want to show yourself. Yeah, I understand wanting to have high stakes and wanting to really set the tone, but to come out and say, if we don't win, we're not cheering the next week. It's just crazy talk, but that's the type of tension, Seton, that you're walking into Saturday.
That's great. I love it. And I've been, we've had our fair share of mutinies with the Bonanza and the Raza Brava, the supporters groups here. We've been through games where everybody wore black. We've been through games where nobody's cheered. We've been through games where everybody was holding up signs on who needs to be fired. We've had walkouts mid-game. We've had we've had it, all of them as well. I'm a little bit in between where I think that the supporters groups do need to put pressure on management, on ownership, on everybody, steering the ship. It might be a
first-year team.
11 matches
it might be a little early.
Yeah.
It might be a little early for me, but I'm not in the group, right? I'm not having the discussions. I'm not part of that fan base. I know that when it's already bubbled up here this year with Hartford about, who needs to be out or whatever, I'm like, no. Hold up. We just went through hell last year. It was awful. You got to give our guys a little longer. Let's get through May before people need to be fired. You know what I mean? Let's just hold up. Let's just chill. Let's pump the brakes a little bit and see who we really are first. And because if we just beat Rhode Island, doesn't that feel a lot better? Isn't that a nice Band-Aid for going on like a skid?
I think we feel the same way. As Rhode Island FC supporters, we feel like, okay, maybe Hartford beating them on their own turf, maybe that will be what we need to start seeing the win column start to stack up instead of all these damn draws.
Hell yeah.
And
all day.
You know what? To kind of side with you guys in this, all right? I don't think not cheering the following week is the answer. I think the following week they'll have to reenact the opening home match for the Revolution where they threw the tee box.
Yeah, you should be your punishment should have to be
the cardboard box
campaign from the Revolution to start.
That should be your punishment.
Because that thing is so dreadfully painful to look at.
That was tough.
I love it, but that thing was just a bad, ill-conceived idea.
As much as we hate Hartford Athletic as Rhode Island FC supporters, we can all agree that at least the two of us are not that. I mean, that could be. That's rock bottom when you're throwing in a damn cardboard box like 10 feet.
Yeah. From Job Lot, no less.
That is, yeah. What was that?
It's like one of those moments, especially like in this business, right? Where I'm sure, fellas, you guys have like you like come up with this bit in your, especially like my morning radio days of like Hot AC and stuff like that. And I was like the wacky sidekick producer guy that was standing on the billboard naked kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh no, this is gonna kill. This bit is gonna be awesome. This bit is gonna crush. And you're about 2 seconds into it, and you're like, oh crap, this is the dumbest thing.
This is terrible. Oh, dude. Listen,
secondhand embarrassment kind of thing when you're watching or whatever. That was that same throw the tea skit where you're like, so at some point this was a great idea, and then it really wasn't.
Like make like a fake ship or something, you know, like fake water, having people like walk by with like waves, or just do something. You do a cardboard box on the freaking turf. Like what?
What are we doing?
History class has really gone downhill.
The year is 2024. We can incorporate CGI into anything nowadays. So you would think.
Right.
Yeah. By the way, speaking about fan protests up here. So Mike, something that you didn't know that I didn't know. Apparently, La Banda was protesting last week because of Brett Louis' departure from the president's role at Rhode Island FC to an advisory role with fortuitous partners. So you already have a little bit of discontent with the fan base because of the way Brett Louis
that makes a little more sense.
The organization. So apparently they walked in late to the match because remember the band's walking.
I do remember that
they
came in late. Yeah,
that was an intentional protest because of the discontent that they had with the Brett Louis decision, which is a whole other frittata.
That's a whole other frittata. But see, next when Hartford comes to
what is that, August 1st?
August 8th, I think it's early August. I know
it's
the first 2 weeks of August.
Yeah.
We'll have to. I think me and Tom, we calling that game. I think we are.
Yeah, we're on that. We're on the call for that.
We'll have to have you come up. We'll have to have you come up and join us in the booth.
Oh, dude, I would love that. Yeah, I got my tickets for the game. I bought a whole bunch. We got a solid crew. As soon as they went on sale, there was over 100 at least. So I'm hoping that whatever you guys bring to the deal, I hope that it just gets a couple more bus loads going, heading out your way. But I'm very much looking forward to the home and home.
Yeah, it's going to be wonderful. And in all honesty, you know, rivalries aside, it's great that the people of Hartford are bought in because they want this rivalry with Rhode Island. So they're going to do what they can to make sure that they do their part. The people of Rhode Island wants this rivalry with Hartford. So they're going to do what they need to for their part. We're all working together in a world where we hate each other. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing. It is.
That's soccer, baby.
Seton O'Connor of the Dan Patrick Show and a longtime follower of everything Hartford Athletic. Seton, plug your Twitter real quick.
Yeah, what is my Twitter? Hi, my name is Seton, I think.
Yeah,
Instagram,
just type in Seton O'Connor on Twitter, you'll find him.
Yeah, there's not a lot of us, you know. There's not a lot of Setons.
So. Good Irish boy, right? Irish?
That's it.
Good Irish man. There we go.
A name like O'Connor. No, he's Portuguese like me. That's a dead giveaway.
You know, when I married my wife, she's half Irish, half Italian, and she very much identifies with her Italian side, though. But her name is Erin Sheehan. And my grandmother was like, could you have found a more perfect woman than Erin Sheehan? You know, so she did the Irish side of the family is very happy about that.
That's great.
Awesome. Seton, thank you for coming on to the show today, brother. Really do appreciate the time.
Yeah, no, fellas, thank you guys so much, man. Look forward to seeing you guys, if not in Hartford, but then when we're out your way. Thanks again.
And tell Dan to watch MLS.